afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Representative Mike Vereb of Montgomery County. Several of our members are currently on the floor. We're debating property tax reform, so we'll make this very brief. I'd like to introduce members that are with us currently. Representative Todd Stevens, Representative Lee James, Representative Barry Joswiak, Representative Mark Keller, Representative Jerry Knowles, Representative Jeff Pyle, Representative Tom Quigley. As you know, we introduced a resolution in the House condemning the governor's actions of putting a moratorium on the death penalty. After that resolution was introduced, the governor reached out and we thought we were having some productive conversation towards getting where we need to be with the governor and where I hope the governor would come with us, and that is currently we have statute that covers the death penalty in Pennsylvania. It spells out the full process of what the death penalty means in Pennsylvania. And I guess we're calling this to say, you know, certainly coming to a theater near you soon is that resolution, that we are going to eventually move ahead with it. We are going to make a very public statement about our disagreement with the governor's position. And really the trigger point of today is two things. One, we have started National Police Memorial Week. In a few days, I and a few others will be down in D.C. honoring those officers across our country who have lost their lives, including Corporal Dixon. The second part of this is the conversation that was reported with NBC 10 in Philadelphia, where they interviewed Corporal Dixon's interviewed his father. And the father relayed that on the day of our state memorial, Mrs. Dixon asked the governor to lift the moratorium for her son's case. There's no doubt it's one of the most tragic, heinous crimes ever committed against police when Corporal Dixon was shot. But the fact that this governor still feels that he will not lift the moratorium for even heinous cases such as that, where there's video evidence, there's statements, there's DNA evidence, and there's physical evidence. So we don't know when these moratoriums will stop. So I figured what I would do today for the benefit of Pennsylvania is just briefly walk through what's involved in terms of other people independently looking at defendants facing death. You start off with the original jury who has to determine guilt. Unanimous decision has to be. Unanimous decision on deciding to impose death. The state Supreme Court reviews jury decisions for possible error. The trial judge reviewing under Post-Conviction Relief Act for possible wrongful conviction. The state Supreme Court reviews the trial judge's PCRA decision. The federal judge reviewing under habeas corpus for possible wrongful conviction. The federal judge panel of the Third Circuit reviewing the federal judge's habeas corpus decision. The U.S. Supreme Court reviewing the Third Circuit and federal judges' habeas corpus decisions, and our pardons board. This is layered. It's layered to make sure that we have the right person. It's layered to make sure that it was not a wrongful conviction. It's layered to make sure that the person whose life is on that death warrant is the right person. We have seen in both sides of this system has flushed it out. 57 people in this Commonwealth review every single death penalty case. One person, our governor, silences them. It's a sitting statute. We are asking the governor to comply with sitting statute. If he does not like sitting statute, then have someone introduce a bill to get rid of the death penalty, and I wish him luck trying to get that done. We need to get to the table. We need to continue conversations that's going to lead to the lift of the moratorium, which we feel is inappropriate, if not illegal. And the reality of it is, when those are sentenced to death and have gone through this process established by statute, we need to execute those folks that are at the end of the line. And it just so happens a number of people in a number of cases are coming for final sign-off by this governor. And I just think it's horrible. It's horrifying that a mother who lost her son by a sniper who planned for years to kill multiple police is snubbed and said that a moratorium will not be lifted for Eric Freen to ultimately be sentenced to death if that's what a jury would find. Does anybody else want to speak? That's all that's going to speak today. I thank my colleagues for being here to meet with me today. Obviously, property tax reform is a very important issue to Pennsylvania as well. We'll take a question or two before we go back in. Correct. You know, Well, the initial reaction, the initial conversation, the governor called and asked to meet, and that's one of the reasons why we held back on this moratorium resolution. We thought if we could have constructive conversation, establish beginning and end lines of where we both are as all the people that have signed on to this resolution, where we are versus where the governor is. If we had to change markers for prosecution, if we had to change some facet of the law to make the governor more comfortable to know that when he signs that death warrant, the right person's being put to death, these are conversations we thought we could continue to have. We then met with we had the District Attorneys Association in with the governor. And it's very clear that the governor does not believe in the death penalty, and there's really no legislative fix that we think we can do. But what drew the line again in the sand for us is so prematurely to answer a question to the mother of a trooper who was killed, and not just killed, but planned to be killed for years. And we think that a jury decides that, and this process decides that. And until then, to just shut a family down like that is completely inappropriate. And that's what's kind of generated today. And we want to explain to Pennsylvania, this is not just some overzealous prosecutor finding some person that committed a crime and sentencing them to death. You'll find that in Pennsylvania, in Dauphin County, Montgomery County, just because somebody's murdered does not mean that prosecutors seek the death penalty. And when they do, this is the process from trial going forward that has to go for every single person that gets sentenced, that gets found guilty, and then gets sentenced to death. Anything else?
The resolution won't change the moratorium, so what can you do on your end, if anything, to change the moratorium? Or is that just going to stay?
Well, I mean, our position, the position of Seth Williams, the District Attorney of Philadelphia, who's in front of the Supreme Court, which we anticipate a decision from the Supreme Court on his action, basically challenges that moratorium. There have been many challenges of these types of actions going back to Governor Casey, when District Attorney Morganelli filed action again and won. The fact is, case law has shown that these types of moratoriums are not appropriate. So obviously the resolution is sending a message to the governor that it's not just Mike Vereb and a few others. You will see that resolution will come out of Judiciary Committee and will pass the House. And the idea is to send that message that if you are uncomfortable with something, let's sit down and talk. But if we're just going to stretch this along, it's just not going to be the final answer for Pennsylvania.
Timeline on that, on the resolution?
As soon as I talk with the chairman. We're not back until June, whether it's that first week, second week, but we will run it before the budget. Anything else?
The governor wanted to do a study while we were in this moratorium process. Did he give any insight on how far we've gotten with this study, or is there any progress being made with what he's trying to attempt to do?
Well, this study has been going on. It's a year and a half late already. What's going on is there's a person going around all the DAs in this Commonwealth getting information from all the DAs. But the reality of it is there have been no other meetings. Ed Marsico is a member of that commission, doesn't remember the last meeting when it was, and doesn't know when the next one's scheduled. It's a year and a half late. It's a very anti-death penalty leaning outside group of people working with some folks in the Senate. And we think if we're going to take a look at it objectively, which I also suggested the governor, to put his own bipartisan, bicameral group of individuals together and give them 6 months to look at it, we were willing to wait if we're willing to look at it. But if you are anti-death penalty, I don't know how you move from there. So we're open. We continue to be open for conversation. But we just feel when there's sitting statute and one person can put a red X through all those folks whose number one job is to make sure that the guilty are guilty and any innocent or wrongfully convicted are then done away with and moved out of the system. That's process is here for that. If they're not guilty, if there's a flaw in the prosecution, then it's up to these folks to identify that, and then the person's removed from either a conviction or from death row. So we feel that this 57 people in every single death penalty case review it. 57 people come out unanimous. If there's not unanimous agreement, then the person never sees a death warrant. That's a concern. If it was just a local DA, a local jury, and a few other people doing this, that's just not what goes on. And because of this amount of people, that's what gives us the length of time it is to finally get a final death warrant. Thank you very much.
Good job.